Welcome, welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. There was apparently a response done to me around, believe it or not, 7 years ago. I actually missed the response because, again, the vegan atheist never shared the content personally with me. It was only brought to my attention by going through my old YouTube review comments that I only came to realize it now, and that's why I'm responding to it. So apparently I'm featured on the Torture as a Test of Faith Silly Muslim comments number 9. But my previous account, my name was Army of Jesus is Islam. Now it's changed to Mustafa Shahin, so it's still me, so that's why I'm responding to it. So let's see what he says, and we'll come back and respond to it.
Welcome to Stupid Muslim Comments. This video series presents some of the amazingly stupid comments by Muslim YouTubers on my channel's debates and videos. Here are this week's top 5 picks. This week's comments are presented to you by Bound. Check out his Indiegogo fundraiser, raising money for field trips and summer programs for at-risk students.
Hello everyone, this is Bound. Please help the wheels on the
Army of Jesus.
Available at indiegogo.com/projects/help the wheels on the bus go round.
Our first comment of the week is from Army of Jesus is Islam Yeldiz, who had this to say.
So he's talking about me, my old account.
Vegan atheist is a retard, honestly. He states in his opening statement, we atheists are not brainwashed, and we can think for ourselves. And we don't need any institution to indoctrinate us. How hilarious. Well, he is indoctrinated by Charles Darwin and Richard Dawkins and the likes. Reading evolutionary books while even at preschool. Lol. Stupid response, atheists do not answer what humans look like before being an ape. And even if you show or state there is no proof of it, period.
It's amazing how many comments I get from Muslims, Christians, and even meat eaters who on one hand complain that they find my videos personally insulting, even though I work hard to refrain from making personal critiques and stick with the content found within the comments, and on the other hand, the same YouTubers who blatantly insult my intelligence and call me names. I'm all for having engaging dialogue with people who hold alternative perspectives, and I'm open to being swayed by compelling evidence, but if the first thing that comes out of your mouth are ad hominem attacks, I can't take anything you have to say seriously.
Well, if you don't take anything I have to say seriously, why are you producing a video against me? That's the interesting part. And notice at the beginning of his video, he actually labels us as being stupid. So why are you saying that's so when we call you a retard, you say that's an ad hominem attack, but you go ahead making a whole feature of your video podcast sessions depicting who you think the stupid people are among the theists. So again, why the inconsistency and the double standard?
Indoctrination is the uncritical acceptance of beliefs, which is typically the domain of the religious. The work and writings of Charles Darwin have, since his death, been corroborated, tested, and expanded upon by educated professionals. One of these knowledgeable individuals, who is also a vocal opponent of religious claims, is the biologist Richard Dawkins, whose contributions to science and literature are open for public and scientific scrutiny.
Whoa. Okay, so his claim is that, so he says indoctrination is the uncritical acceptance of beliefs. And he tries to say that is the epitome of religion. Interesting, because when you look at the term atheist means the belief in the non-existence of God. And when you have a look at that, can atheists actually prove the non-existence of God? They can't. They can't actually prove the non-existence of God. Now, some atheists say, all atheists means is a lack of belief in God. They're not making any certainty claims. They're just not sure whether God exists or not. Excuse me? That's what agnostics believe, not atheists. Atheists, on the other hand, make more certain claims, such as God is a delusion. And even certainty claims to suggest why there is no God. Is that testable evidence? They're literally making an open and clear and definitive claim why there is no God. And that's written by an atheist called Armin Navabi. Here's another one, published by Carl Sagan. God is not real because space is big. Because space is too big and it's just too complex and we're just insignificant, there is no God. God is not real. That's a definitive statement. And here is another one that says 100% proof God does not exist. 100% proof that God does not exist. So these are your atheists making definitive statements.
Indoctrination is the uncritical acceptance of beliefs.
If we go to Charles Darwin's letter, I'm not sure if anyone here has looked into it. He says, these are some key points, and I'll put a hyperlink below this video and you can read it for yourself over here. He says, he doesn't think the wonderful universe is just a product of brute force. However, people like Richard Dawkins do claim it's just a product of, brute force, that it just, something just exploded and all the products, just came wonderfully, all the diverse, complex things just came together. Yet Charles Darwin doesn't believe that. So Richard Dawkins goes against Charles Darwin. He's inclined at looking at everything from designed laws. So Charles Darwin looks at everything through designed laws. Does Richard Dawkins look at everything through designed laws? Although Richard Dawkins says he can see the signature of design in the cell, he doesn't claim that it is designed by any law specifically. But it seems to me that Charles Darwin does, which is again contradictory to Richard Dawkins. Charles Darwin also says he describes, Darwinian evolution as chance, but that definition does not satisfy him. Again, you can see the paper here, and I'll put a hyperlink below this video so you can see it for yourself. So it's really interesting how he tries to say, oh, look, Charles Darwin's paper's been tested by notable people like Richard Dawkins, and yet there is a contradiction between Dawkins and Charles Darwin. And evolution can be interpreted in different ways. So, and they misinterpret evolution. Here is an example. This is a perfect example. Someone like Richard Dawkins reading Charles Darwin's books, for example. How evolutionists interpret the natural world, but how it can be interpreted very differently and just as plausible. Let me give you an example. Let's say an evolution observes a crab lurking on land, shore, and eating from the land. Interpretation 1. Evolutionists, those crabs decided to come out of the sea millions of years ago in search of more food. That's how they evolved into land-dwelling creatures, by growing legs, and that's how we got crawling spiders today. However, there could be an interpretation 2, meaning crabs were designed to live both in the sea and on land from the very beginning. They did not have to grow legs, they rather always had them to explore both worlds to their advantage, that being beneath the sea and on land. See, interpretation too can be interpreted equally as plausible from the dogmatic interpretation of one, of Darwinian evolution.
Scientific scrutiny. Religious claims regarding how the universe operates and how it came to be are never testable and must be accepted as fact. These claims are often taught in early childhood and reinforced throughout adolescence.
This is a lie because he says religious claims are never testable and just proven as fact without any testable evidence. If you look at the Quranic scripture and whether if it does give scientific descriptive analysis upon how the natural world works, what we have is if it says a statement, for example, the Quran says every living thing is made from water. And the vegan atheist says, oh, there's no testable evidence. What do you mean there's no testable evidence? Science says that every living thing contains water, H2O. And so is the Quranic statement not testable? Is that what you're going to say? So I think he's being deceptive to say that when the Quran mentions something, it's not testable; it's just accepted. And the Quran keeps we're finding out as science evolves and as science progresses, we find out new things that are in line with the Quran. And interestingly enough, things that are against the Quran, what we find is they eventually reapprove itself to come back in line with the Quran. Because as you know, scientific analysis is done by human observation, and human observation and testing requires peer reviews and constant testing, and therefore one academic reference can be disproven by a secondary academic reference. And so science is ever changing. Evidence is, not all science is ever changing, but with new information, it changes and it brings itself in line with the Quran. And that's what we've been saying. So there is no contradiction between true science and Islam. And if there is a contradiction, well, it doesn't mean that the Quran is false. It just means science needs to catch up and reapprove itself. And we have that. We've seen that. For example, the Quran says that the sun, yasbahun, it spins on its own axis. Science many years ago said that it was stationary and it doesn't spin on its own axis and rotate. But we came to know that through modern technology and modern science that it reapproves itself. So it now comes back in line with Islam. And let's stick to the point about indoctrination. The atheists say religion is a form of indoctrination. It tends to lead to biases that aren't properly examined, with other possibilities being considered equally, leading with an answer and only presenting others are inherently wrong, with methods to take them apart without an equal consideration towards all beliefs. My response to the atheists is, just name me just one prominent atheist, agnostic, scientist, skeptic out there that talks about other possibilities, like the God hypothesis, as a possible explanation to the creation of the universe. I'm not talking about being pressed or pressured into saying God may exist. Rather, in his works or in his academic papers, he declares a God hypothesis. We always hear other possible hypotheses like the multi-universe theory, the creation of our universe, yet not a single paper on God hypothesis. So please tell me more about indoctrination and biasing.
Science taught in the classroom is about educating the next generation of minds based upon testable, falsifiable facts that have been confirmed by the scientific community at large. What is taught represents the body of knowledge that the consensus of scientists and educators have concluded best represents our current understanding of the universe.
Response. The scientific consensus is that evolution is a fact. Regarding appeals to consensus, Michael Crichton said this: there is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus, period. In 2008, 16 of the world's top evolutionists met by invitation in Altenburg, Austria. Their purpose was to discuss the crisis in evolutionary biology because many of them had come to see that the supposed mechanism of mutations and natural selection did not explain the diversity of life. The only consensus was that there is a major problem. See a review of the book about the conference. History is replete with examples of consensus science that later proved to be dead wrong. Furthermore, when we examine the way in which consensus is achieved on evolution, we can see that it is no measure of truth. Effectively, anyone who dares to question the prevailing evolutionary paradigm is denied a place of influence among the science fraternity. No scientist who wants to progress in academia will dare to step out of line. There are plenty of examples of what happens to wayward to warn any would-be dissenters. See the games some people play. There are even organizations operating to protect evolution from any criticism. Finally, much of this consensus was achieved by counting heads that themselves arrived at the consensus by counting heads.
In regards to the question, what humans looked like before being an ape, our distant pre-ape descendants looked like a four-legged small mammal. Perhaps your next purchase should be a high school biology textbook.
Let's refer to him on that. He shows a similar creature because it's got 4 legs. Wow. Does homology prove evolution? Selected similarities between organisms are said to be evidence of common ancestry, evolution. These similarities can be visible features or at the protein DNA level, but the argument is the same. This is an example of the fallacy of affirming the consequent, too. The pervasive pattern of homoplasy, which is a term evolutionists use for similarities that cannot be explained by any conceivable pattern of common ancestry, undermines the logic of the argument. Common design explains all similarities, both homologies and homoplasies, but evolution cannot explain the pervasive homoplasies. The camera eye evolutionists say must have evolved independently 6 times. Labeling such things as due to convergent evolution is pure circular reasoning and lacks any explanatory power. Evolutionists claim that the God would not have created things with similarities, but this is a theological argument that presumes to know the mind of God. But in saying this, they clearly have not thought much about it. Here are 3 rather obvious reasons why God would have created similarities. 1. Pattern points to one creator. We need to be similar. Food. Ecological reasons. Historically, creation with similarities, reusing good design features, and being a mark of creative prowess. The idea that new different is better is a very modern idea. The homoplasies refute naturalistic attempts to explain the similarities without God. See homology made simple and echolocation homoplasy, an extreme example of homoplasy at a DNA level. So this evolutionist hasn't shown anything. He's shown a creature like them. Just imagine this for a sec, guys. Before we were human beings, this is what we look like, apparently. A friggin' rat-looking creature. Can you believe it? What is it? Half rat, half foxtail-looking creature. That's what we looked at. And he says, it is testable. Really? Did you actually examine that thing visually and you see it turn over millions of years? Did you slowly see it turn into a human being under your test tube, did you? Or do you just imagine that's the way it happened by just looking at similarities? So are similarities in nature evidence for Darwin or neo-Darwinian evolution? Response. This is a further response. God does not reinvent the wheel. There will be similarities of design if the design comes from the same engineer, because they're saying, oh, look, that creature's got 4 legs, whatever, and it's got eyes and ears, and it looks, this is what human beings would have looked like before they were human beings. Therefore, seeing similarities in nature does not prove one had ancestry relationships with the other, or that over millions of years one species evolved from a different type of species because they share similar traits. Rather, all species were created individually and uniquely by a single designer. When you see similarities, that's only proof to a signature of design. Also, they got confused because Allah designed some species to adapt to new environments, so they may show how their physical components slightly grow larger limbs, or their genetic makeup might get enhanced, like we see in bacteria where the same bug over time becomes a superbug. But notice it's still a bug. There's no change of kinds, like evolving into a different bug. It's still the same bug with more advanced qualities, because it's designed to adapt better to different climates, and its genetic coding had room for it to get expressed, and it only gets expressed in times where it needs to adapt to a certain environment. Humans have adaptation skills also. If you can't swim in water below 2 degrees, if you train hard enough every day, your body will start resisting against shock, and before you know it, you'll be swimming without any problems. Although species can slightly modify themselves, they don't have the capability to change to a completely different kind of species, which the evolutionists want to stress it can happen, as he showed that diagram of that creature with the 4-legged, which was apparently the human form before it became a human. Whenever you request them to prove one species changing completely to a different type of species, and remember he said there was proof, we can test it, they will tell you that's a silly question because it takes millions and millions of years to see those drastic changes. So that's a pretty much their getaway card. When they cannot prove it, it takes millions and millions of years. Well, how can you be sure if you weren't there millions and millions of years ago to observe it? When they cannot answer this, they will then rely upon fossilized specimens to say, look, these are the ancestors of modern day species, trying to draw a comparison, yet the species they show are two fully developed specimens and do not show half developments. However, because a bird-looking creature has no wings, they think this is half developed, when all this could mean it was fully developed and it never intended to have wings. However, they will still insist it has an ancestral connection because it shows some very good similarities. Besides having wings, but that draws us back to my original point, similarities don't prove ancestry connection. It just means God can create similar looking creatures in millions of different ways. And let me last leave you with this. You know how they say, oh, it's all testable. Their evolution, their Darwinian evolution, it's all testable. There's no indoctrination. But have a look at this. Yes, according to science, the 5 images that you see, the ape man, the classical image everyone uses to illustrate evolution is actually wrong. So it's not even correct. And I'll put a hyperlink video below this video so you can see it for yourself. Yes, we told you long ago it was wrong, but you didn't listen. You told us that if we disagreed, we were anti-science and we lacked progression to trust the scientific community. And it was religion holding us back from the truth. Well, now evolutionary biologists say it's wrong. Yes, the classical image atheists tend to use to prove how human beings evolved is wrong in its illustration. But hey folks, there is no indoctrination here. No, they're not trying to indoctrinate. No, because it's all apparently based on proof and evidences.
Perhaps your next purchase should be a high school biology textbook.
Perhaps your next purchase should be an updated version of a biological textbook. Because the last one was clearly brainwashing the masses.